Leah, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, it's funny. I had to take a second because I told you, hey, just so you know, I start by saying, Leah, welcome to the show. But I was like, you've been on this show before. It was probably the most unique episode I've ever recorded because it was live in person in front of an audience. There were four of you that I was interviewing. But I'm glad that we get to sit down and get to know Leah a little bit more. So why don't we just start out with who is Leah today? And then we'll break down how you got there.
Yeah, I am a wife of 25 years to my husband Tommy. I am a mom of three sons that are, almost done with high school. My youngest is 17. So I have a 17-year-old, an 18-year-old, and a 22-year-old. So almost an empty nester. And I'm speaking a lot. I do commentating with college softball at the Women's College World Series. I do national radio with Westwood One and a little bit of ESPN work. And yeah, I'm just doing so many different things. A lot of fun opportunities have been coming, all because the other part I didn't mention yet is I'm a three-time Olympic gold medalist with USA softball. And so that has continued to open a lot of doors for me.
Yeah, just a small feat, a three-time gold medalist. So let's talk a little. I want to talk a little bit about that journey just to give context to people that are listening, right? Like I've had a number of I've had some gold medalists on, I've had some bronze medalists on my podcast, and I'm always so impressed with the dedication and the hard work that it takes to get to be that not even a one percenter. Like what is the percentage of, Olympic gold medalists in the world? Like it's like 0.0001%. So when did it start for you? Obviously, I'm sure at a young age playing softball, but like what was the shift? How did you know like, hey, there's something special here? I could do something really big with this.
I would say when I was 14 years old, our team went to a national tournament. A year earlier, had just been playing my local softball, right? So, travel softball wasn't that big at the time. And a coach saw me and he said, "Hey, we'd love to have her come play for our travel ball team." Well, a year later, we head to Tennessee, Chattanooga, and we're playing and we make it to the finals and I'm pitching and we end up winning out of 52 teams from all around the US, the best
Wow.
players across the country. And so at 14 years old, I really believe there was a spark that my eyes had been opened. Hey, there's some opportunity here. I loved soccer as well, but softball really, it was clear was going to open more doors for me. That is when I would say the college scholarship dream began. I was the first one in my family that would be going to a 4-year university if I made that happen. And a few years later, I did get the opportunity to play at the University of Arizona. So at that time, that was the big goal. That was the end, everything I thought, okay, softball is going to lead this journey. I love it, but it's going to get me a college scholarship. It ended up giving me so much more than I ever could have dreamt. And that happened because when I got to the University of Arizona, we won a national championship my freshman year. And that year was when they said softball is going to be in the Olympics in 3 years, 3 years later. And that was going to be the first time ever. And then that became the big dream.
Wow. And then didn't it went away, right? And then now it's back again? Like what was that whole thing? Because I saw you posting about it. What a terrible thing for them to remove and then put back in. Like what part did you play in bringing that back? If you did at all.
I don't think I played a part, but here's what happened. It finally got in. They had been, trying to get it in the Olympic family. Baseball and softball actually went in at the same time. And so, it's an Olympic sport. I played in 3 Olympics. There was another Olympics in Beijing after I retired. So there were 4 straight Olympics. And then they did a vote and they kicked out softball and baseball. They wanted to add other sports, but they said we're not adding without taking out. And so they did a vote and they chose that baseball and softball were the 2 sports to go, and they brought in rugby and golf. And so after that, softball was out of the Olympics for 2012 and 2016. And then, yes, once it got back to Japan, Japan is one of the best in the world. They actually have 2 Olympic gold medals in softball, and USA has 2 silvers. They brought it back for Japan, the Tokyo Games, and then actually this summer, it's so sad. It's not going to be in Paris, but
Oh
it
my
will be
gosh.
back in LA in 2028. And it's now one of those bubble sports where they allow between up to five sports that the local hosts can vote on and can bring in some sports.
Interesting. That's so fascinating to me. I had no idea, but I want to talk now as I digress, right? Let's go back to your journey a little bit. What did that look like for you? Obviously, it wasn't a natural thing, right? Like obviously the little nudge at 14, but then it was like, okay, this is a vehicle that I can use to build a dream for myself. Thus began the work. What's the difference between you, a three-time gold medalist, and somebody who may just break into college, or somebody who may, play through high school and then obviously not get into college on a scholarship? Like, what do you think the difference is?
I think a lot of it is talent mixed with mindset. I played and then the opportunity you have. I was very fortunate. I was injury free pretty much my entire career. I had support. I think that's important. I had a lot of support growing up. I played for quality coaches, so I was constantly getting better. I think I'm very fortunate because there's a lot of programs out there where people go and they just play and they're not getting better along the way. They just are gaining more experience.
Yeah.
I was constantly learning and growing as an athlete. That was huge. When I got to the chance to play for the University of Arizona, I was surrounded by the elite athletes at that level. That's another, I think, anybody that's highly successful, it's who you surround yourself with. So that pushed me. If I was going to earn a spot at that level, I better raise that standard. I better be at the highest standard, what I call the gold standard now, with my gold medals. But there were all these factors. And then, so now, okay, I'm at that level. I've learned, I've grown, I have great coaches. And then it's what do you do with the opportunities that are before you? That's the game changer. Because what happened was, as our team worked and got to the Women's College World Series, and then I had these big moments of opportunity, it was coming through when it counted in pressure situations, not just once, but over and over again. And I believe that's what led to people saying, we need you. We want you to come to our tryout. We think you're in this top group of athletes that we believe can represent our country at the highest level.
Yeah, what was that feeling like when you got that phone call or however the invite happened? Like, because I think a lot of times, like, I was so far from an athlete, by the way. I played some baseball and then I ended up breaking both my hips when I was very young, and then sports stopped. But I remember watching the 1996 Olympics. I think most people in my generation, that's the one we were introduced to because it was in the United States in Atlanta. And you could obviously sit down and watch it. And I remember thinking, like, how cool would it be to be an Olympian? Like, wow. Like, I remember even getting chills at that time. And I was, what, 12 years old at the time. What was that like for you to be like, oh my gosh, like this is real? Like what was that like internally?
Well, getting invited to the tryout was the first step in the process. And that was, that's out of my control. Right. But being invited was now this like excitement and this joy of like, okay, look I'm one step closer. Now I just got to get out there and show them what I have. And I think like that's how I'm driven is possibilities of opportunities that are placed before you. Like if you have the option, then okay, now I can go show what I'm made of. And so that I got to the tryout and then it was a sit and wait. Right. And then they named 15 of us. Actually, this is going back to the Atlanta Games. I guess I'm 9 years older than you because I was 21 years old at the time. And I was in college still. And they posted the list the day after tryouts ended on the door the next morning. It was before all the cell phones and everything. And my name was on that list. And I think at first it was hard to celebrate because so many women, their dreams were crushed in that moment. So it was really hard when I got on the phone with my parents and told them, I think that's when it sunk in. And I just, this excitement, this joy. But I will tell you, Justin, that was also like one more step in the process, obviously a huge step. And then the real work began because then it was all about bringing home the gold medal.
Yeah. And let's talk a little bit about what you mentioned earlier. Well, before we get into the gold standard and the work that needs to go into everything and the new book and all that fun stuff, you mentioned surrounding yourself with the right people is key. And once you get with these elite athletes, it's about pushing yourself to go even further. Before we hit record, you and I were talking about masterminds and the power of them. Like, business, life, sports, everything is so true. What did you notice as far as like a pattern of the people you were surrounding yourself with so you could push yourself? Are there certain things that you were looking for where you just placed in a room? Like, what did that look like? And what's that look like now for you?
Yeah, as an athlete, it looked like each day that you went out to practice, there was purpose behind everything. It wasn't, you did not feel the going through the motions. I think at a lot of levels, people just go through the motions. So there's a really high purpose behind everything that we did. I think, you saw people that were frustrated when it wasn't going well and figuring out quickly, how do I find success after I failed at something? I think that's huge because we're all a little bit different. We all respond to failure differently, but how can I lean on the people that maybe deal with it the same way I do. I found people that I had those connections with within the group. So I have a group, but then you find within the group the people that you can really lean on and talk to and trust the most. And so I think that's huge. And so now, yes, I believe I've been a part of a mastermind. I've been in some really high circles of high level success people that have just done amazing things. And, even though we're in different career fields, it's the same mentality of just knowing that there's always more. And just knowing like having a listening ear. I'm going to tell you right now, one of the things that sets Olympians apart. I coached in the small pro softball league years ago, and I had a couple Olympians, one of them I had played with. And then there was a lot of All-Americans from college. And there was still a level of difference there, because the difference of the Olympians, the second something felt a little bit off, they're immediately, hey, Leah, what do you see? Hey, can you
Hmm.
can you talk to me? Can you work extra with me? That is what it is. Like that ability to say, like, I want to keep learning. I want to hear from you. How can I apply that to me? How can I get the edge? And if I see other people having an edge at what they do, I want to hear what your secrets are, because maybe some of it I can apply. And I'll tell you, I saw that from my Olympic coach. He at the time was one of the winningest coaches out there. He went on to lead us to Olympic gold, but he was constantly still learning and growing better. So I saw it from my leaders. I saw it from within my team. And then now I see it, in the real world and in all different aspects.
I love that. And so what was it like? What was the difference between your first Olympics and then your third Olympics as you kind of look back? Like, what did you play different roles? Was there a different feeling? Was there less pressure? Like, what's all the emotions going through from the first to the third?
Yeah, I think the first one, I was in college still. I was pretty naive. I think I was there just to have a good time. And I was just following the leaders on the team, right? It was like, this is so fun. I'm just so thankful to be here. It was a different role. I was, playing half the time. I was splitting right field with another athlete. And even in the championship game, gold medal game, I was a substitute, and I didn't take that lightly, because that just made me more hungry to find another opportunity to get back out there on Team USA. And so, my second Olympics, I started every game in right field. And then my third Olympics, I'd been married in between my first two. So there were a lot of differences. I was
Mhm.
a veteran. I'd been on the team, going to my third Olympics. I had learned so much and wanted to pass that down. We had a lot of young new athletes, very talented, very gifted, but you still got to lead and be connected. I was a mom. I was the first mom on the Olympic softball team. So my son
Wow.
was 3. So I feel like I almost had also a little different perspective of like, okay, like go out, give everything, but just remember, like, you have family, you're a mom, like there's things that matter more. So when you start feeling that pressure, keep everything in perspective, you know and so I think just leading and really, again, trying to let everybody feel like they were a part. I knew how much that meant to me in my first Olympics, so it was a big difference. And then at the very, very end, as it was getting closer, I knew that was going to be it. I knew I was hanging up my cleats after this. And so the closer it got to the end, I think my emotions, I started to feel like, just like, oh, this excitement, we're going to bring home the gold again. And then almost just like this, like, it's done. This process, this journey, who has helped make me who I am, like it's finishing. And so there were more emotions for sure in my last Olympics.
Yeah, one thing I love that you did though, even post Olympics, is you've kept softball in your life in so many different ways, whether it is announcing or working with organizations and helping young women, find who they are in the sport. So many people have these passions at a young age, and then they tend to lose themselves, right? Like I've had some former NFL guys on my show, and they often talk about when their NFL career came to an end, like their life almost spiraled. Like, what was your driving factor of keeping softball in your life and continuing to keep your hand on the pulse of the sport?
Well, it's kind of fallen into that. There were different opportunities. I was local and I was home. And so actually some people were like, hey, what about coaching local high school? I did that for a couple years. Not right after that was when I got asked to do commentating with ESPN. Just a little bit, not year round, but I did a little bit of that. I as an athlete, as an Olympian, a lot of times we're just trying to find ways to survive so we can keep training. So I
Yeah.
did a lot of lessons. That led to a lot of clinics. That's how you and I met, Justin, because it was a clinic in Pennsylvania with my Olympic teammates. Jenny Finch had these big camps, so there were a number of years that I did that. Some of it was an opportunity to go make a little bit of money. Otherwise, it was also a way to inspire this next generation. If they can see these women who have been where they want to go, or even can at least, set them in that direction, I know that the response and the result is they're going to become better humans for the opportunity. So some of it just has fallen into my lap, But what I see, even at times where I feel like I'm like, well, I want to do more of my speaking and share those stories, but it almost keeps pulling me back. So I just try to weigh every opportunity and just see. And actually, this year, out of nowhere, I got invited to coach the Florida Vibe, which is a professional team, for a couple months in the summer. And so it was not on my radar. It wasn't anything I was aspiring to. But when the opportunity arose, I just waited out and talked with my husband, and I thought, you know what? These are young ladies who are where I was in some ways, and I feel like I can give them that big picture perspective of leadership and help them to then go on to be make a bigger impact. And that's really what my book is about. That's, what I'm about. The gold standard is living excellence in every aspect of our lives, and so it really keeps pulling me back.
Yeah, I love it. And I love the fact that you're just like, it wasn't on my radar, but it seemed like something that felt right to me. And so I said yes. Like, people ask me the question all the time, like, where do you see yourself in 5 years, 10 years? I go, well, I've got a plan. I'm not going to tell you because there's a good chance that I'm going to get veered off of that plan because of a good opportunity. 5 years ago, I couldn't have said that I'd be doing this, right? Like, it's just one of those things where if you're open to opportunity, the world will present it to you. And then you got to kind of figure it out from there. Now, you'd mentioned, obviously, you're speaking and you have a new book out called The Gold Standard. Talk a little bit about the concept behind what the gold standard is and how this is not just for Olympians. This is for everybody. Like, everybody can literally learn from this type of thinking.
Well, I found throughout my career, I did play in 3 Olympics. I had 3 national championships. And then I've gone on to do some TV work and commentating and speaking. I've been in a lot of different areas, right? And I've met a lot of people in different fields. It comes down to, I realize, is how you do everything is what matters most. A lot of us want, right, to be successful. We want to make a difference. And what I realize is it's how hard you work, like the effort and what you're willing to put in, right? How mentally strong you are in many ways, like how positive you can remain, how much you can learn. Like the mental side, no matter what we do, is huge because you can make all the money in the world. But if you're spiraling out of control mentally and you're losing your whole family and your life, and what good is any of that, right? So,
Yeah.
so how you are, and then the third for me is how you deal with people, how you relate, how people respect you, but how respectful are you to others? Because that's another area. And what I found is when you do those things with excellence, when you work really and give all that you have with the skill set you have, not trying to be someone else, but being yourself. When you are able to be mentally strong and healthy and have and then have good relationships, I really believe the world opens up for you. I think that just so many more opportunities. I know for a fact because for me, my name was thrown around places, and that has opened more doors than I could have ever probably opened on my own. That is how I got commentating with ESPN. That is how I'm doing Westwood One Radio every year at the Women's College World Series national radio. That is how I ended up, for 4 years being a co-host on a sports show with AC Green of the Lakers and Frank Pastore of the Cincinnati Reds, because you met people and how you carried yourself and who you are as a person, it opens that door. So to me, that is the gold standard, that someone can see it and say, I want to be more like that. Like, look at, I see this example. And with that, people walk away and really they feel like your presence made a difference. And then they can then pass that along in a sense, like understanding that you can walk into a room and you can actually make the room better.
Yeah.
And you don't have to be the star. You don't have to be in the spotlight. You don't have to be the CEO or the manager. You can literally be the freshman on the team that comes in and is like, I'm going to live this example and I'm going to show what the gold standard is about, and everybody's better for it.
I love that. And you're 100% right. Like, relationships, I'm going to steal a line from my friend Mike Kim. Relationships are rocket fuel to everything in our life. Like, if I didn't have the relationships I've been able to build over the years, I would not be doing anything. That I'd probably be in some job that I hated, trying to find a way out. And the relationships are the things that gave me the opportunities that have been presented to me that I was able to say yes to. And it all comes from a place of integrity, right? Like, a lot of times people get into certain rooms with people, and I'm sure you've seen it as an Olympian and an Olympic gold medalist. People go, "Oh, I need to get to Leah." Usually the intention behind it is, I want something out of this. But if you're able to approach it of, I think I can help Leah, and actually mean to help and not have any intention or bad intentions behind it, you're going to win every single time. And I imagine that's how you approach all these things, right? With curiosity, with the willingness to give. Is that what you've noticed in your life, and how you've been able to continue to build those relationships where, like you said, your name is being spoken in rooms you've never stepped in?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely it. And I think when you do things with excellence, it not only brings success, but it helps you sustain success and stay there. And that is one of the things that I have prided myself on is that a lot of times I get invited back to places I've been because they're like, no, we want that again. There was a huge impact. I had spoken at the National Junior College the banquet at the World Series for them. And they said, okay, well, it's 2 years. So in 2 years, can we have you back? They said, you're the first person we've actually brought back twice
Wow.
because we really want this next generation of athletes to hear your message. And that meant a lot to me because, a lot of great people had been there. But that just, all that does is it reminds me that the message is resonating. And I think that's important. Like you just mentioned, how am I adding value? Right? How am I being helpful? So if I'm coming in and I'm able to not make it about me, but make it about the people that you're serving and you're around, I absolutely think that's a win-win. And I like to win. So
No, I love it. And I always say like my life changed when I stopped trying to be the most interesting person in the room and started becoming the most interested person in the room, and asking the right questions, and figuring out, hey, how can I support this person and get to know them more, right? And then as I look at the gold standard that you've set in the framework, the G stands for goal setting. And goal setting is fascinating to me because I think everybody does it differently. Everybody sits down and they choose their goals differently and they go about it a different way. I have a three-tiered system for my goals, which is must, should, and could, like all these things, right? So everybody does it differently. I would love to know a little bit about how you went about goal setting in your life and how you continue to, as you continue to build your speaking portfolio, and now obviously have launched this book. Like, how have you gone about goal setting?
For me, it is a little bit more general. I do have a vision board, has some, things that I'm looking for. I did it as an Olympian, and actually, I went away for a long time. I was really, honestly, my focus were my three boys. I did a lot of times, a lot of things while I was raising my boys. A lot of things that I just mentioned, traveling, speaking, different things. But the majority of the time, I was home, and I actually homeschooled for 13 years. But then as I started to shift and my youngest went off to high school, the last couple years I've been okay, I've been almost getting back into like they were the priority and I was accepting other things. Now,
Hmm.
what are those goals that I'm actually striving toward? And so that's where it got back into okay, what are these things? And so my vision board, so I have that big picture. And then I have these just short-term things. And for me, there's some lists. I got some lists going, but I really and I find myself sometimes I got to pull myself back in. Finishing my book was a big deal and I had a lot of different things going on. But this past fall, it was like, okay, I have to say no to a lot of things because this goal, which I've been working at towards a while, it's taking longer because I'm saying yes to the other things. And so that was like that prioritizing is really what I view it as like, what are my goals? What is my priority? And so there's a lot of little ones in there, but I like to say, what is the big one and how much am I working towards that? So mine is a little bit more general, a little more big picture. One of my Olympic teammates, Jenny Finch, who you met, she said for her, like it was just like she knew the big goal. The big goal was the Olympics and winning gold. So
Yeah.
that's just every day what drove her. That was enough to keep her on task. So, like you mentioned, everybody does it a little differently, but for me, I just noticed that if I start getting off track or I feel like, wait, I'm not keeping the right priorities, that's when I'll tend to like get it a little bit more written down, a little more focused, a little bit more like knowing myself.
Yeah, and it's so important. I think it's so important to have that big vision, right? So I have a daily visualization practice that I do to really envision that next big thing I want to do. So I'm trying to think when this is coming out. I can't talk about it, but I'm doing something that I'm visualizing every single day right now, right? That big vision. And part of what that does for me is it keeps my blinders on, right? Like the shiny object syndrome does not happen for me a lot of times because I
Yes.
have that big vision. And I found when I don't have that vision, oh, what's that? Oh, what's that? And I never really
Yeah.
complete anything because you live in a world similar to mine in a sense that like opportunity gets given to you because people look at you as in a position of power. And how can we work together on this thing? Like, is that how you stay super focused when you're like, okay, just big vision right now, big vision? Because that shiny object syndrome thing is real.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think there's times where I have a little bit more flexibility. If, I mentioned like I wasn't planning it, my summer was pretty cleared, which is very uncommon for me. And that's why I almost felt like, okay, maybe this is just meant to be. Like maybe I'm supposed to go work on, I wrote this book on all these leadership skills, but now, and I've been doing, some different different ways of living that out, but this is going to be a new environment. And you know what? There's a higher level athlete that I'm going to work with. And for me too, yes, I just want to be able to give them experience I had. I played at the highest level, but there's some people that play at the highest level and they still have a miserable experience. And so I want them to enjoy it, love it, and then almost be a launch pad for whatever they go into next. So yes, I feel like it's like I know that big picture. And so sometimes I'm a little more flexible, but like I said last fall, I realized it's not going to happen if I say yes to other things. So I really had to shut things down for a while to say this is the priority no matter what. And my my family and friends, they'd be like, "Oh my gosh, you can't hang out again?" Like, and I'd be like, "I can't. Like I'm working on my book." And they were so like they're like, "I can't wait until it's done." And so now that it's done, I've been like, "Oh, I can watch this movie with you guys." But yes, it was like, I'm sorry. Normally I would have said yes to those things, but for this period of time, I'm saying no.
Yeah, I love that, and so few people do that, right? So I hope people heard what you just said and it resonated with them because if you have a big vision, the only way to do it is to say no to other opportunities. Like we only have so much time in a day, and I imagine being a mom. I'm guessing all three of them were athletes.
So two, my oldest was much more, we tried all the sports because he was my first, but he was much more creative and loved history. And so eventually it was more the arts and TV and movies. So then my next two have been, yes. So I had football season for my senior son last fall. So every Friday night, that was the priority. And then right now, actually, I'm in the middle of track season for my son that's a junior. And really, like, that is also the priority. So that's the other thing that's getting everything is being moved around, worked around. Then next week I'm flying to New Jersey and I'm taking a red eye because I'm watching my son compete in his finals for his little school district. And then I'm going to jump on a plane because otherwise the answer was no, I can't do it. But instead I'm like, oh, am I going to be even coherent when I get there after flying on a red eye and trying to speak?
Yeah, I can't sleep on planes. We took a red eye to Dublin for our honeymoon last year. And I was like, oh yeah, it'll be overnight. Like I'll be able to sleep. Nope. Landed in Dublin. We immediately went to the hotel and took a nap because I was like, well, this is what we're doing. I can't do the red eye thing. So good luck with that. Like that's gonna be tough. And I have a stepson in 8th grade and he runs track. And so we're currently in the middle of track season. And last week there were 3 track meets because of a tournament, and then also they had to move one because of rain. And I'm like, oh my god, like 3 of my afternoon into evenings are completely wiped out
Yes.
by this track meet. But again, I'm grateful to say that I have the flexibility in my schedule to be able to show up for him and be there and cheer him on, right? Like, and so when you're able to do that, it's an absolutely priceless thing. And the window is so small, right? I imagine now you're looking
Yeah.
back as your last one's graduating high school, and you're like, oh my gosh, like that flew by. Is that what you're thinking at this point?
It really does. And yes, and it feels like a lot, like you just mentioned. Same thing with us. We have like between Saturday to Saturday, we had four because they had moved one. And same thing. It's like, whoa, like I still have all these other things I'm trying to do. But like you mentioned, there's seasons. I mean, I was used to seasons in softball, but it's seasons in life as a mom, as a wife, and these boys. And we only have one more year left. My son's football season now. He's might play junior college, so I'll get a few more games to watch him in. But really, and you know what? My kids they're gonna always know I was there. And I'll tell you, Justin, how important that was for me when I looked up into the stands after winning my first Olympic gold medal and turned immediately to my mom and my dad. And I knew if they had not done everything they did and sacrifice and do all the things that it took in order for me to reach my goals, I would have never been on that podium. And so I made a choice. A lot of people, go into college coaching and that's great. I think it's a calling. For me, I knew what my coach sacrificed in order to be there for us all the time. And personally, I knew that I wanted to keep my family to where that was going to be. I could be there as much as possible. I know it's not you know op, an option for everybody, but I that's what I wanted.
Yeah, and it's so true. Aiden has said to us, he's like, I love that you guys come to every single one because my wife can get there too. And I was like, even me, because I'm the stepdad. And he goes, well, you make me nervous. I'm like, well, good. Nerves are good. Nerves are a good thing. Like, because I'm definitely the tougher one for sure.
Yes.
But super proud of him and the work that he's put in, even though it's not something that he absolutely loves. It was kind of a force. Like you have to do something physical because you're not sitting around on your computer all the time. His improvement has been exponential, which I love seeing. So I want to ask you a question. It's a two-part question I ask every single person on the show. The first part of the question is, what is your definition of success? And the second part is, what are three things you do every single day to ensure that success for yourself?
I believe success is living a life of excellence, giving your best and having a good mindset and then treating others just well, right? Making a difference in the lives of others. To me, that's success. That others would speak highly of you in the sense of you made a difference and impact. Um, I don't think it's tied to money personally. And for me, I think it's a matter of waking up every day and knowing that God has a purpose for me today. I'm still here for a reason. Every day is a gift. I see really hard things all around me. And so if I can encourage or inspire or motivate someone to go out and reach their full potential or realize there is a purpose for them, then I've done my job. And so I think it's really a matter of for me just taking stock each day of, am I doing stuff that's just going to be all about me, or am I making my family better? Am I making an environment better when I go speak? Am I bringing value to the world, basically? And so I think it's about others. For me personally, that's what true success is. It's about making others better.
Yeah, I love it. And so I want to ask you this question as well. So I want you to fast forward to the end of your life. You're about to take your last breath, and everything that you've done and you've created, from your book to the 3 gold medals, that has all been stripped away from the history books. At the end of your life, you can only be remembered for one sentence. What would you like that sentence to be?
She loved God with all her heart and lived it out every day.
I love it. I love it. So I wrap up every single interview with the same question, but before we get there, let's get to the good stuff. How do people find you? How do they get your book? Tell them all those things.
Yeah, my website is the best place because it has all the information on it. It's leahamico.com, Leahamico. That pretty much will lead everybody. It'll have my book on there and it'll have, all the information about what I do. Instagram, Leah20USA. So, it's my number and it's been, my Instagram once it started. But those are the best ways. I think through my website. I'm on LinkedIn, Leah O'Brien Amico, and just excited to continue sharing with the world. I have a podcast, the Gold Standard Podcast with Leah Amico, where I interview elite pro and Olympic athletes and I talk to them about the core principles that make up the gold standard according to their mindset and what they view and what they've been able to do after reaching that top level of sport, how that has translated into life after sport. Because you do see some people that struggle afterwards. So the podcast is out there. The book, The Gold Standard, is The Gold Standard 14 Ways to Live a Life of Excellence, is on Amazon. And yeah, my website will show all of that.
I love it. Like I said, I wrap up every single interview with the same question. Since the show is called The Growth Now Movement, that question is, in your life, what has been your biggest moment of growth?
Oh, I don't know if I could say as a moment, it literally has been raising my 3 sons because I think you learn the most about yourself. You have an idea of how things will go. And you talk about leading others, raising citizens that can make a positive difference in this world. And so for me, it's been as a mom and trying to do my best to pass on greatness to this next generation.
The most difficult thing I've ever done in my life is raise children, and I've only been doing it for 5 years. So it's quite the journey, and totally feel and understand that answer. But Leah, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your journey with my audience. This has been great. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Justin. I'm grateful for what you are doing and how you're impacting the world in a positive way.